Hi everyone, welcome to your first lesson. Today we will be talking about classifying polynomials. But before we start with the lesson, let's go over some notebook expectations. So whenever you see the pencil mark, that means to write the things on the video onto your notebook. And then whenever you see the puzzle logo, make sure to answer the question on the Edpuzzle assignment. So let's get started. Let's start with the focused learning target. This is your learning goal for today. Given an expression, I will be able to classify the polynomial. It may feel like you need to write a lot, but honestly, writing helps you retain a lot of the information. It'll help you better remember the stuff we've covered. So you might be thinking, what is a polynomial? So think of a polynomial as something that has a lot of terms. And if you ever need more time to process the information or to write down the stuff, go ahead and pause the video, and you could always also rewind the video. So let's look at some examples. Anything like 3x or x minus 4 or simply 8, these are all considered polynomials. Today we're going to talk about how to classify polynomials, basically how to name a polynomial. So just like how we have a first and last name, think about polynomials as also having a first name and a last name. Let's focus on the first name. What does the first name of a polynomial tell us? So the first name of a polynomial is the degree. Think of the degree as the largest exponent of the polynomial. So when you look at the polynomial, what is the largest exponent? That's going to tell you the degree. I know my talking and writing isn't super synced, so remember you can pause the video at any time if you need more time to write. Let's look at the different kinds of first names a polynomial can have depending on the degree. So if the degree is 0, it would be called a constant. So let's look at some examples. 5, 8, -3, -3,000. So it's a constant if there are no variables. Basically, it's a constant if it's only a number. So what if we have a degree of 1? These would be called linear expressions. So think about just having a variable like x, 4x plus 2, 1/2 x minus 5. These are all linear. Notice that there are constants in some of these, but it's still considered a linear expression because we're focusing on the highest degree. So if the highest degree is 2, this is going to be called a quadratic. So something like x squared minus 4, 5x squared plus 2x plus 3. Again, we're looking at the highest degree of the expression. All right, so what if our highest degree is 3? This would be considered a cubic. So here's some examples of cubic expressions. 8x cubed, or 1 over 7x cubed minus 10. Again, focus on the highest degree. So we talked about 4 different types of first names for polynomials: a constant, linear, quadratic, and cubic. So let's look at some examples. Make sure you're writing down the examples in your notebook as well. So is 6x cubed a cubic expression? So if it's cubic, we should have a degree of 3. So 6x cubed, that definitely has a degree of 3. So yes, 6x cubed is a cubic expression because the highest degree is 3. Make sure you're writing why this is true. So again, because the highest degree is 3. So let's look at another example. Is 8x squared minus 2x a linear expression? So we know that the highest degree of a linear expression must be 1. But if we look at the 8x squared minus 2x, we notice that the highest degree is 2. That means it is not a linear expression. So no, this is not a linear expression because the highest degree is 2. So what kind of expression is this? Since the highest degree is 2, this is a quadratic expression. Again, since the highest degree is 2, this is a quadratic expression. All right, so please try this next example on Edpuzzle. What kind of expression is this? And then one more example on Edpuzzle. Choose an example of a constant expression. All right, so we got the first name of a polynomial down. So next, let's look at the last name. So the last name of a polynomial is determined by the number of terms. So think about how many things are separated by a plus or minus sign. So let's look at the different types of last names a polynomial can have based on the number of terms. So if there's only one term, we're going to call this a monomial. Think mono like monocle, so 1. Some examples would be 5x squared, 3x, or 8. So notice right here, we're not focusing on the degrees right now. So don't look at the degrees. All right, so if we have 2 terms, this is going to be called a binomial. Kind of like how a bicycle has 2 wheels, think of a binomial as having 2 terms. So an example would be like 3x plus 2 or 4x cubed minus 5. So we have 1, 2 terms, 1, 2 terms. So these are binomials. So what if we have 3 terms? This is going to be called a trinomial. So think of a tricycle having 3 wheels. A trinomial will have 3 terms. An example would be something like 5x cubed minus 2x plus 10. There are 1, 2, 3 terms here. And if it has 4 or more terms, we're going to call this a polynomial. So poly meaning many, so many terms. So an example of this would be something like 6x cubed plus 5x squared minus 3x minus 8. So if there's only one term, it's called a monomial. If there's 2 terms, it's called a binomial. 3, trinomial. And if there's 4 or more, it's called a polynomial. All right, so let's look at an example here. Is 8x cubed minus 500 a binomial expression? Remember, a binomial expression should have 2 terms. So does this expression have 2 terms? Let's see. So we have 1 term, 2 terms. So yes, we do have 2 terms. This is a binomial expression because there are 2 terms. All right, so next example, is 5x minus 2 a monomial expression? So a monomial should have only 1 term. But if we look at 5x minus 2, there are 2 terms. So 5x minus 2 is not a monomial expression because there are 2 terms. All right, so what kind of expression is this? Since there are 2 terms, this would be called a binomial expression. So go ahead and try this example on Edpuzzle. What kind of expression is 8x cubed minus 7x plus 3? And for example 4, choose an example of a polynomial expression. So now we know how to give a polynomial both a first name and a last name. And we want to make sure we classify them both with the first and last name because we want to be specific. Like imagine me saying, oh, Chris. I could be talking about Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth. And if you're only talking about last names, you could be like, oh, Johnson, and be talking about Magic Johnson or Dwayne Johnson, 2 very different people. So we want to classify polynomials both with the first and last name in order to be specific. So you determine the first name by the degree of the expression, and the last name by the number of terms of the expression. Again, you use the degree and the number of terms. Right, so let's classify some polynomials. So our first example is to classify 7x squared minus 3x plus 4. Right, so what kind of polynomial is this? First, let's look at the highest degree of the function. The highest degree is 2. And so that means it's a quadratic. And now let's look at the number of terms. So there are 1, 2, 3 terms. So that makes this a trinomial. So this is classified as a quadratic trinomial. Our next example is to classify 8x cubed minus 20. So our highest degree here is 3. So degree of 3, and that would make this a cubic. And we have 2 terms, 2 terms. So that would make this a binomial. So we have a cubic binomial. All right, next try to classify 10x cubed minus 3x squared plus 7x plus 5. Since our highest degree is 3, we would call this a cubic. So the first name of this polynomial is cubic. And since there are 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, this would be considered a polynomial. So this is a cubic polynomial. Alright, so on Edpuzzle, please try classifying the following polynomial. 5x squared minus 2x plus 10. And your final example on Edpuzzle is to choose an example of a quadratic binomial. Alright, so great job making it through the lesson. Let's just do a quick review. So when classifying polynomials, think of it as giving the polynomial a first and last name. So the first name of a polynomial is going to tell you the degree, or basically what the largest exponent is. So if it's 0 degrees, it's a constant, 1 degree, linear, 2 degrees, quadratic, and 3 degrees, cubic. And the last name of a polynomial tells you the number of terms. So if there's only 1 term, it's called a monomial, 2 terms, a binomial, 3 terms, trinomial, and 4 or more terms is called a polynomial. All right, great job, guys. Please be sure to turn in your notes.